The Bank of Ghana was hopeful of a positive economic situation for 2022 by setting the inflation target for the year at 8 plus or minus 2%. With the previous year recording inflation rates of as low as 7.5% in May, the government was hopeful of a bounce back this year. However, the situation seems to have taken a downward turn. January began the year with an inflation rate of 13.9%, picking up with just a minimal 1.3% above December's 12.6%. Influenced by food and cost of fuel, the inflation rate increased by 1.8 percentage points to record 15.7% in February. The trend continued into March, with transport, including fuel, pushing the inflation rate to 19.4%. The country's inflation rate took a sharp turn in the month of April. April saw a 4.2 percentage points jump in the inflation rate to clock 23.6%. The next 2 months, May and June, remained in the 20s, recording 27.6% and 29.8% respectively. Still, the main drivers of inflation for these months were food, transport, housing, water, gas and electricity, mostly recording inflation rates higher than the national average out of the 13 divisions for the computation of inflation. The upward trend in the inflation could only get worse by zooming up to 31.7% in July. August came with a record high of 33.9%, the highest since the Ghana Statistical Service rebased in 2019.
Disaggregating this into food and non-food inflation, we identified a 0.8 percentage point difference between food inflation and non-food inflation, specifically with food inflation 34.4%, non-food inflation 33.6%. From a domestic item and an imported item perspective, imported item for the 5th month in a row recorded a rate of inflation higher than domestic inflation, specifically 35.2% for imported items relative to 33.4% for domestic inflation.
Many economists and analysts have suggested several ways by which the government can stem inflation, including the domestic production of food and the review of the Planting for Food and Jobs program. On its part, the Bank of Ghana has continuously increased the monetary policy rate as a means to check the situation, with the most recent measure being an increase to 300 basis points after an emergency meeting. But despite all of this, economists and analysts still insist that the country is not going to be out of the woods anytime soon.
When you look at the numbers we are seeing, it clearly suggests that the inflation high inflation is going to remain with us for a while. You notice that the big ticket items, i.e. the items that carry the most weight in our CPR basket, all of them have seen substantial increases.
International ratings agency Fitch Solutions also expects Ghana's inflation rates to remain high in the near term in the face of spiking global food and fuel prices, coupled with a continuing investor concern over the country's large fiscal deficits, which is putting downward measure on the cedi. According to the agency, Ghana's consumer price inflation will average 25% and 15% in 2022 and 2023 respectively.